morning. Today marks 6 months since Hamas's October the 7th attack against Israel, where Hamas militants attacked Israeli military bases and also Israeli civilians.
Well, you will remember that more than 1,100 people were killed, 250 people taken as hostages, and about 130 of those are still missing.
Well, the Hamas attack triggered the ongoing military action in the Gaza Strip as Israel tries to destroy the group.
Well, political editor for HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, joins us now. Where are we at the minute, Kevin, with all of this? Because it's been an interesting 6 months, hasn't it, in the outrage in Parliament over what happened, which has slowly shifted now to real concern about how Israel is behaving.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, I think there's definitely tension behind the scenes in government. I think it's significant that this morning Lord Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, has written in the Sunday Times pointing out that the UK's support for Israel is not unconditional. Slightly stronger language than Rishi Sunak's own message, in which he reiterates the UK government's support for Israel and its support for Israel's right to defend itself. So I think clearly there is some sort of discussion going on behind the scenes in government as to where perhaps the UK needs to draw a line, where obviously, as I say, they are supporting Israel's right to defend itself. However, we just saw a few days ago UK aid workers being killed by an Israeli missile strike. So that has definitely caused a lot of concern within government. And David Cameron has been seen, ever since he became Foreign Secretary, as being one of the more sceptical voices, I think, where Israel is concerned. Although he does support Israel, I think he's more inclined to point out where Israel get things wrong.
How much do you think the killing of those aid workers has been the tipping point in the changing of tone from the West?
I mean, I think the tone had been shifting prior to that attack. There had been rising voices of scepticism, not just in Britain, but in America as well. But certainly that has crystallised and has become a focal point, I think, as for the West to maybe stop and think about where the conflict is going and to what extent the West can continue to support Israel in the way that it has up until now. I think it's also significant that Nancy Pelosi, who is a real ally of Joe Biden, has added her name to calls yesterday for the US to stop arming Israel. So that, I think, is quite a significant development as well.
I mean, look, if one thing, this highlights how difficult the situation is. The problem seems to be, Kevin, that this is incredibly, as we know, it's incredibly nuanced. It always has been in the Middle East. It's an incredibly difficult situation. And yet the public in here and the United States and elsewhere seem to be either very pro-Israeli or very pro-Palestinians. And there doesn't seem to be, it's black and white. There's no grey involved in any of this.
No, you're right. The voices on both sides of the extremes are very loud, and there is no, as you say, grey area, meeting in the middle, compromise positions. It's you're either, as you say, pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. I think that makes it very difficult for politicians in particular. We've seen the Labour Party see itself in another civil war over the last 6 months. We've seen Labour councillors resign over it. Rebellions against Keir Starmer's position, although Labour's position has, moved some way in the last 6 months as well. So yeah, it is. I think that's what makes it much more difficult for politicians to strike a balance. But they do need to strike a balance if there is going to be some sort of resolution to this conflict, which unfortunately it doesn't look right now, 6 months on, as if we're any closer to it ending.
And Kevin, what do you make of the scenes that we're seeing in Israel at the moment? 100,000 people reportedly rallying against the government last night, demanding a Gaza hostage deal. Because I suppose for a lot of people inside Israel, they appear to be so far away from their objectives, which was to destroy Hamas and to free the hostages.
Yeah, absolutely. We see rising concern in Israel as to the tactics of the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and, what the ultimate aim is. It's one thing to say that you're going to destroy Hamas. It's much more difficult, as we're seeing, to actually do that in reality. And the hostages, unfortunately, so many hostages are still being held captive, and we're no closer to achieving any sort of deal which would see their release. So it's a pretty difficult situation at the moment, and it's unsurprising, I think, that Benjamin Netanyahu is coming under a lot of internal pressure, although I don't think there's any real suggestion that his position is under any imminent threat.
OK. Kevin, for now, thanks very much indeed.